Welcome back. My name is Kelly. I'm one of the all-in-one health dietitians, and today I want to show you a fun little recipe called zucchini slice. It's something that I briefly mentioned in one of my other videos where I was talking about making a healthy shopping list for when you're in isolation. So let's get going. A quick overview of the ingredients. We need 2 to 4 zucchinis depending on the size. So I've got kind of medium-sized zucchinis, so I've got 3. Couple of bunches of asparagus, an onion, some eggs. I got some frozen veggies over here. I couldn't find any fresh herbs a week ago, so I've got these herbs in a tube. I've got some little flavor foods. I've got some chorizo and bacon here, cheese of course, and then some flour, butter and milk. Now you could of course grate these by hand, but because I've got this handy little food processor, I'm going to whiz them through here. And what you want to end up with is something like this. Now you certainly don't have to add meat to this recipe. Instead of things like bacon or chorizo, you could add more veggies. Mushrooms, pumpkin would make great substitutes, or you could add something like tofu. You could even add a tin of beans. I've chosen shortcut bacon for us, and what I'm going to do is trim that white visible fat that you can see here, because this is where the bacon will hold most of its saturated fat, which is the fat that's not as good for our health. The second thing I've got here for a bit of flavour is some spicy chorizo, which I'm going to cut up into small pieces. Now this is a high saturated fat product and it's also high in salt, so you don't want to use much of it to make a healthy recipe, but definitely spread out across a whole zucchini slice. It will just add that hint of flavour and deliciousness. So you can see here I'm just going to trim around and take off most of the white visible fat. Right, so I have 4 slices of bacon here, and now what I'm going to do is layer them on top of each other like this, and cut them into small bits. Now I'm no chef, so this is all very rough and ready, and then I'm going to come back the other way. Okay. And then same with my chorizo. So I'm going to get my chorizo out here. Just going to top and tail him because I don't like those little end bits. And then I'm just going to cut him down. Now you can see that bright red, already orangey colour, and that's from all the spices in it. We get these from our local butcher. And then what I'm going to do is a few at a time, just going to cut these down halfway, but you could even quarter them. And this is what we end up with. A bit of bacon and a bit of chorizo. I did end up actually quartering them so that they go further. Now I'm just going to wash my meat knife and get my vegetable chopping board out. Give me one moment. Now we're going to peel and chop my little onion. I like to cut it down the middle because I find that easier to peel. And I'll peel him. This. Okay. And going to peel this one. Like that. Okay. I'm going to chop the ends off, and then to get a nice fine dice, what I'm going to do is, see those little lines that are on an onion? What I'm going to do is kind of cut through every kind of second one. It doesn't need to be a super fine dice for this, you can make it finer if you would like to. Like this, following it around. So you don't need good knife skills, as I clearly don't. Then what I'm going to do is hold them together, and then cut kind of down the middle here. And then I'm just going to cut like, okay. So then what you're left with is this really small dice. Okay, I'm going to do the same to the other onion. I like to use extra virgin olive oil when I'm cooking. Normally I try to find an Australian brand, but I couldn't when I was at the shop, so we're just using this one here. So about 1 teaspoon is all we need. Like that, just to get them going. On a medium-high heat, we're just going to pop the onions in first. Okay, we'll get that going. Just when the onions start to turn that yellowy, translucent colour, we're going to add in the bacon and the chorizo. And the fats from those will help stop the onion from sticking to the pan. Now, if you were using a different kind of protein, something like cooked chicken, for example, that's a little bit leaner than bacon or chorizo, you wouldn't add it in at this point because it's already cooked. So while we wait for the bacon, chorizo, onion mix to cook in the background, we're going to talk about the kind of quiche, eggy part of the zucchini slice.
So in here I've added 6 eggs before I drop some shell in, and I'm struggling to get it out.
Okay, so normally we would use about 1/4 of a cup of milk. So I'm going to use 1/4 and I guess a half of milk. And then into that we're going to add about 40 grams, which is about 2 tablespoons of butter. Now, if you don't have butter, you could also use olive oil because it's melted. Just going to get my whisk. Just make sure the butter isn't too hot, otherwise you might end up with scrambled eggs. There we go. And give it a good mix. Make sure it's well combined. Heading on back to our bacon chorizo mix. This is all cooked, it looks fantastic, smells amazing. So to here, we're going to add the rest of the veggies. Okay, so all I've done is I've just cut up my asparagus into little bits and taken off the woody ends. And I'm going to cook these really briefly in the pan with the chorizo, bacon, onion mix so that they're nice and tender when they come out of the oven. So if we just add these in. This is what we've got so far, and I'm just going to add this back onto the hot heat. Also into this, I'm going to add the frozen veggies, really more to defrost them than anything, but I'll do that in just a second when our asparagus has cooked through just a hint. Our egg mixture is nice and blended, and to this I'm going to add some flavourings. So I'm going to add a bit of cracked pepper. And I've got some dried basil leaves. And then I'm going to actually add my Italian herbs into my asparagus-y bacon mix. So my asparagus is slightly softer than it was, so it's slightly cooked, which is all we need it to be. And now I'm going to add in the frozen veggies. And we're going to add in about 1, maybe a bit more cups of it. This is my 1 cup measure. What have we got? 1, yeah, let's go. 2 cups of frozen veggies. Lots of veggies. This is what we've got now. So So really what you're kind of looking for is that 2.5 cups of vegetables in total, not including our zucchini. So I'm just going to give this a little mix around, defrost those veggies. Okay, that's about done, and this is what we're looking for. So I'm going to take this off the heat. Now for the essential part of the zucchini slice, the zucchini. I'm just going to chuck this all in this huge bowl and try not to make the biggest mess. The next thing we need to add is a bit of flour. Now I had trouble finding any kind of flour. I had a teeny weeny bit of self-raising flour left, which is what we're meant to be using. So ideally, if you have it or you can find it, 1 cup of self-raising flour goes in here. I didn't have that, so I have a mix of self-raising flour, plain flour, gluten-free plain flour, and then I've added a little bit of baking powder to make it rise in the same way that self-raising flour would do. And you're just going to pop that into your zucchini. Now kids, parents, you can get your hands in there, give it a good mix. Me, I'm going to use a scoop. There we go. So we're just going to give it a good mix until the zucchini is evenly coated. And then into this, we're going to add our bacony mix. This is also where you add any other kind of veggies you've got going on. Okay, so this is what we've got now. And now I'm going to add the egg mixture into here. Here we go. The recipe needs about 3/4 cup of cheese in total, so I'm just going to add about half of that into my actual mixture. Make it nice and cheesy. Now I'm going to give this a really good mix. And what you should end up with is something that looks a bit gloopy like this. If you find that yours is a little bit dry, you can add some extra eggs and a bit of extra milk. We're nearly there. Get your baking dish and pour in your zucchini slice. Make it nice and smooth. It will rise a little bit because of the eggs, and hopefully you've got self-raising flour in there, so eggs and self-raising flour. That. And then we're going to sprinkle the rest of the cheese on top. Like this. My oven is set to 180 degrees and it's fan forced. Tuck your little food baby into the oven, nice, safe and sound. The original recipe said to bake for about 40 minutes. I always bake for a little bit less and then test it, so I'm going to put it on for 35 minutes. I've just taken the zucchini slice out of the oven, and as you can see it's nice and golden brown, and what you're looking for is for the egg to be set so it's not all runny when you're kind of pressing through the middle. So you've finished making your zucchini slice and you've sliced it up into little squares depending on how many serves you want. What do you do with it now? Well, there's lots of things you can do. You can have it with a couple of slices of good grainy toast and have it with brekkie. Or you can dice it up and put it through a wrap with some salad and make a bit of an omelette sort of wrap. Or you can just serve it with a nice simple salad on the side. Anyway, it's delicious. In terms of storage, you can either keep it in the fridge for a couple of days, or you can pop it in the freezer, and it's really easy to defrost in the microwave. I'd love to hear if you made this recipe and how it turned out.